What the heck happened to Rich Franklin?
Rich trying to get away. Oh, he's down. Frank. Again on the button. Out.
Down goes Quarry.
Franklin trying to work it.
This might be it for
Can protect himself.
He's on it.
It's all over.
Remember UFC champion Rich Franklin? The guy who went from high school math teacher to the king of the octagon? Then, just as fast as he rose, poof, he vanished. What happened to the fan favorite who seemed unstoppable? Did he choose to walk away from the fame, or was something else at play? Why did he vanish from the octagon? And what is his current status? To grasp Rich Franklin's path completely, we must discover who lies beneath the athlete, the mentor, and the thinker intent on personal elevation. Beyond being a stand-up combatant, he excelled in organized strategy. He was much more than a puncher. His body was built strong as his resilience and strategy made him memorable in such a harsh competition as MMA. In what way does a well-intentioned fighter leave the arena he became famous in? Let's dive deep into Franklin's incredible journey, examining the heights of his career, the challenge that led to his retreat from the UFC, and where he's found himself today. The story of Rich Franklin is full of twists and turns, triumphs and struggles, and it's about so much more than just his fight record. From classroom to cage, the teacher turned fighter. Rich Franklin particularly attained UFC fame. Before taking the ace name in the UFC world, Franklin taught math classes while pursuing martial arts on the side. Growing up in Cincinnati, Ohio, shaped Franklin's childhood as typical. In a household that prioritized determination and schooling, his family instilled in him a love for both education and hard work. One would think Franklin had his life in order. For many years, he taught math at Oak Hills High School regularly. Even though he acted professionally outside his work environment, Franklin experienced significant unhappiness. The empire of competitive sports attracted him, and he found it essential to pursue a more basic and powerful pursuit. This begs the question, what is the reason for a talented teacher with a great future to escape the comfort of the classroom for the dangerous ambiguity of the octagon? It was easy for Franklin to understand. He was a lover of martial arts and could not suppress his passion. He started practicing martial arts, and the feeling of entering the cage was exclusive to his teaching career. He realized that, given the significant risk before his leaving, was integral to following his passion. Leaving teaching behind to go all in with MMA was not an easy one, though. Franklin has never been the type of person to back down from a challenge. Though he already had fighting skills, he was not just good at it, he wanted to be better. His main martial arts were Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, and wrestling, and he was a mixed martial artist. It was not long until Franklin started to sacrifice his time and proved his worth to the MMA community. In fact, could Franklin have ever thought struggling to grade math tests and trying to teach his students he would become a UFC champion one day? And did he ever think that as the sky became brighter and his path to success seemed to go upward, he might drop just the same? Imagine being in high school math class and your teacher is a future UFC champion. Mr. Franklin, can I retake this test? Yeah, maybe don't ask that guy twice. The rise to UFC stardom. Rich Franklin, when he began his journey in UFC, was one of a kind. As he progressed through the rankings, it seemed like his stock was rising to the moon daily. He immediately hit the big league as a KO artist with brutal submission skills and ring acumen. Franklin also wasn't just winning fights against some of the best fighters in the world. He was winning them impressively against some of the best fighters in the world. His early UFC wins, such as a TKO over respected wrestling master Ken Shamrock, established Franklin as not one of the many fly-by-night fighters out to make a fool of himself and be done with it. Rich wasn't just a great fighter, he was a math teacher turned champion. Did anyone see that coming? Nope. And now the question is, could anyone stop him? It wasn't until 2005 that Franklin can be considered one of the all-time great UFC fighters. In 2005, Franklin defended his UFC middleweight championship title against Evan Tanner at the UFC 53. Even though Tanner is a former champion, and Franklin has had a rather long career and extensive practice, he was unable to overcome Franklin, largely due to determination and the use of correct technique. Franklin took this title and became one of the rising stars of the sport and the United States. This is the real life, the raw spirit of Franklin's rise to the pedestal. Not elevated technique, but work. Franklin was a man of hard work, and he had much passion for his work. He wasn't the strongest, the fastest, or even the most naturally talented, But he had something many fighters lacked, replacing it with a thirst for perfection and kicking personal bests into the next level. It helped him become a contender as well as a hero that all the young fighters would like to emulate. Although he quickly advanced in the sport, fears of his weakness remained. The UFC sees champions overcome by contenders over time. In a harsh rivalry, champions go through vitally important tests. What occurs when a top competitor faces an adversary who dismantles them entirely? The Silva struggles. In 2006, against a rising star named Anderson Silva, a weakness emerged for Rich Franklin in his UFC career. Silva was an individual in combat. His exact strikes and agile movement created a challenge uncharted by anyone. At UFC 64, in his prime, Franklin entered the octagon with surety to protect his title. What followed became a severe challenge for the reigning title holder. Franklin faced a brutal takedown by Silva, who crushed him with kicks in the clinch and shattered his nose before the bout ended in under 3 minutes. The victory went to Silva, not only by way of defeat for Franklin, but also by excessive control. A person who had risen quickly faced a moment of deep acknowledgement. He lost that sense of invulnerability within mere minutes. For most fighters in this situation, a loss like this would mark them forever. Even after losing, Franklin refused to let that moment alter his character. He recovered and readjusted his perspective before moving forward. When he made his comeback to winning in the octagon in 2007, he showed his resolve and perseverance. Again, proving himself to be an unbeatable opponent for Franklin was Silva. Silva ended Franklin in the second round in their second match and showed that the Brazilian was superior. Silva's 2 powerful losses led to doubts. Did the title of champion no longer suit Franklin? Has he enjoyed a fleeting moment of prominence? Or did he simply meet the top middleweight of his era? At that time, there was no answer to these questions that impacted Franklin's career ahead. What steps must you take to learn from 2 defeats that shamed you against the same rival? Facing Anderson Silva was like stepping into the ring with a sniper. One wrong move, and it was game over. And for Franklin, he got hit with that sniper shot twice. But was this the end of his story, or just a turning point? Reinvention in the light heavyweight division. With the second loss to Anderson Silva, the options were narrowed down for Franklin. The king of the middleweight division, Silva, no longer appeared achievable. To seek fresh opportunities and a new beginning in his career, Franklin leapt to the light heavyweight division. The change went beyond a mere physical change. It was also an emotional one. After years as the UFC middleweight champion's face, Franklin had to reshape his persona. In the beginning, it appeared that the shift to light heavyweight had been a success. At his debut in the division against Matt Hamill, Franklin emerged victorious via TKO in the 3rd round. This triumph served as important psychological encouragement, yet it did not revive the outstanding style that had made Franklin a champion. In the saturated light heavyweight division, softness emerged quickly, which proved challenging for Franklin. After losing by split decision to Dan Henderson in UFC 93, his fight against Vanderlei Silva became a hard-won contest. He faced tough foes, but did not gather the consistent victories he needed after his losses to reclaim his standing as a contender. Although in the light heavyweight division, his journey provided some achievements, it missed the zeal of his early UFC periods. With each fight, Franklin faced the effects of his body became clearer. As he suffered injuries again and again, his former strength proved insufficient for obtaining reliable wins. People both in the stands and in the media started questioning if Franklin had reached his peak. Can he rethink his strategy? Or does it seem the end is near for the previous victor? The slow fade from the spotlight. Even though the battle's ahead of him, Rich Franklin pursued his fight in the UFC for several more years. He encountered a group of famous rivals along with rising competitors, but lost the strong leadership style he showed before. Franklin met UFC great Chuck Liddell in a bout in 2010 that established an important moment in his later life. Franklin showed great strength and determination during his battle with Liddell. Even after sustaining a broken arm in round 1, Franklin hit Liddell with a powerful punch in the last seconds of the round to win the fight. Franklin produced a stunning triumph that showed he could still impress in his final years. This kind of triumph lessened in frequency. Numerous years under brutal training aggravated Franklin's health, to the point he could not meet the requirements of the sport. Many injuries and a broken nose had impacted his health. No matter how hard Franklin fought to succeed, others' failures and setbacks showed his reign as champion was coming to a close. Even with injuries piling up, Franklin wasn't just fighting for victory. He was fighting to prove he still had it. But how long can you keep fighting when your body keeps telling you to stop? The focus had changed from whether Franklin could recover his former glory to finding out for how long he intended to pursue his career. For an individual who cultivated his legacy through grit and determination, retiring was a hard subject to tackle. By the time 2012 rolled around, the end of Franklin's career approached. In his last UFC match against Kung Lee by knockout, he would close an era of his fighting career. How did it seem that Franklin moved out of the UFC unexpectedly? Why did a fighter receive less than a grand farewell for all the sacrifices he made? There wasn't one particular point or choice that defined Franklin's leaving the UFC. This gradual outcome came from continuous pressure, too many years. A new chapter, life after the octagon. Once retired from the UFC, Rich Franklin became a player in the business world. Instead of staying inactive after retirement, he became a business owner and a speaker who inspires in the world of mixed martial arts. In 2014, Franklin became the vice president of One Championship. In his new role as an executive in MMA, gained access to the sport he enjoyed while avoiding its challenges of physical strain. He wandered internationally in pursuit of upcoming fighters, while uplifting and expanding MMA around the world. For Franklin, this was more than employment. It represented a way to foster the sport that had made a significant impact on his life. Outside of professional MMA training, Franklin embraced his entrepreneurial objectives by launching different firms, including Zealand's Juice Bars. As a result of his experiences in the industry, he became a life coach who inspired individuals worldwide through his message of persistence and change. The way Franklin shifted from being a fighter to running a business is quite stunning. Numerous athletes find it hard to carve out a purpose after their competitive years finish. Yet Franklin accepted his new task with the same commitment that earned him the championship status in the UFC. What's your take? Rich Franklin's journey combines success and failure along with transformation. From a math instructor in high school to a UFC title holder and an entrepreneur in business success. So what do you think? At what point did Franklin choose to leave MMA? Was his decision to wait before leaving the sport the right one? Leave a response in the comments section.